In this video, we're going to talk about how to create a slick slider using the slick. Okay, so what we need to do first is to create a file called Customizer Slider.php under the temp directory. So we'll go ahead and create let's close this all first. Okay, inside of a theme, we'll create a temp directory. Okay, and also need to let you know what we are trying to do is basically create an option in the customizer for the slider, okay, over here, so that we can add images, and then we need to display that on the front end. So we need to write some code to display that in the front end. Okay, cool. So we've created the temp directory. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to create a file called Customizer Slider.php, which will have all the settings and controls. Now remember, like in the previous video, we had created a file called Customizer Settings to create settings for the custom uh, adding custom controls into Customizer. Similarly, for the slider as well, we are creating a file so that we can add controls into it. Okay, add functions for adding controls and sections, etc. Okay. So let's do that. Okay, so this file is basically, we need to place this under Customizer Settings Dot php. Okay, so let's do that. So we have admin, then customizer settings. In the previous video we spoke about this. We had this file which had all of these settings, function, control functions, etc. And we had called this inside of the customizer init. So we had used this file inside of a custom function register, and we had hooked our register function to customize register hook using add action function, so that that customizer controls can be added onto the customizer in the backend. That's what we need to do now. So since we have created a file, now what we need to do is we need to include this file inside the customizer settings .php. So we'll do that using the get template function. So we can include that somewhere here. Mostly we need to use require once. Okay, and we can mention that this is for adding controls and settings for customizer. Okay, so what's going to happen is this file will be included over here in this file, and this customizer slider.php again has the add section, add control, add panel, and things like that. So that will be included in this file, and this file will be called inside this customizer init.php, and over here this file will be called over here, and inside of this function, custom function, and this custom function is hooked to this hook. So when the script reaches this hook, it'll call this custom function register. It's going to include our customizer setting file, which in turn will include the customizer slider.php file, which will include these functions, and these functions will be executed. So I'll just explain that to you, what's going on in this function. So we're going to create this slider as we have discussed in the previous video. Add panel function is to create a new panel inside of the customizer. So if you now check in the customizer, you can see that we have the new panel slider option, okay, created, and that's the title slider option. Okay, and priority is 10, which is why you have it next to general, because remember the priority of the general was also 10. If I want to show you, I can. In the previous video we discussed the priority of the general pane was also 10. That's why they are hand in hand. Okay, and if I want to show the slider options on top of general, then I can reduce the priority to like 5 or something else. lower, something lower to ensure that this is on top, but doesn't make sense because general should be on top. Okay, so next thing what we need to do is then we have capability as edit theme options. We have discussed all of this in the previous video, you know, what are these parameters and everything, so I don't want to spend too much time into it. Okay, so this is description, which talks about add slider. Okay, and then we are running a for each loop so that these functions can be called 8 times, and we don't, because we want to create the 8 slider sections. Okay, so that's why we are running all of these functions from here till here into for loop. Okay, okay, so this add section, all right, add control function is basically going to go ahead and create a control with a priority of 10. Section is corner section under, and then it's going to get the I value, which is 1 over here. Okay, and then label, which is title, um, and then the setting, which is corner slides. I will be equal to 1 and then 2 and so on as this loop progresses, and this title. Okay, so this is going to create the control inside of the slider. Okay, all of this control will be created. So this add control title is going to, you know, create the control for title. Similarly, add control description is going to create a control for description, and then you have the add control for link. It's going to create the control for link, and then add control image is going to create the control for image, but this is just going to create the control, won't add it until you use the add section. So again, you have the add section, which is going to add this section to in the slider section. Okay, so all of these, every time you are calling control, there is a, you know, attached function that we need to call, which is add section for each of the add control, and then we also need to call the add setting for each of the add control, so that these values can be added into the database under WP options, under theme mods, Cornova is the slug of the theme. Okay, so basically add control is going to create the control, add section is going to add that controls over here, and then add setting is going to you know, put that value in the database. So whatever the user enters over here, that data will be inserted into the database. Okay, so this is how it'll be done 8 times, which means each of these you know, controls will be added to each of these sections, either 1, 2, 3, and up until 8. Okay, and then I like explain to you that this file is called under customizer setting, and this file is called under the custom function register, which is going to be called using the customizer register hook, and it's going to be added over here in the backend. But this is not going to go ahead and display that on the front end. In order for us to display that on the front end, what we need to do is we need to create a file that displays that on the front end. Okay, so which will be Slider Dot Php. So let's go ahead and create a file so that we can use that file to display the slider on the front end. So we're going to go into our temp folder and we're going to create a file called Slider Dot Php. Okay, and I'm just going to copy paste these codes and I'll explain to you what this is going on over here. So again, get theme mod is basically going to get the value of the this ID, which is corner slide, which is the same ID that we had used while creating these panels. Okay, so you can see corner slides is the name of the ID. All right, so it's going to get that value, and if this name is available in the array, okay, and if the user is on the home page or on the front page, then only then this slider will be displayed. And inside of this we are checking for each loop. You know, we are having this array slides. This is going to return the array slides. So once I go ahead and go to my slider options, go to first slide, and I've entered this title, description, and I've chosen one image for this, and if I publish it, then you will notice that if you go to the database under the WP options, under the theme mods, Cornova is my theme slug name, and if you double click on this, you can see there is an array which is created under Cornova slides, and that's what this is going to do. Get theme mod is going to get the value of the Cornova slides, and as you can see, the Cornova slide value is actually an array. Okay, and this array contains the slide one is the title, description is this is the first slide, and the image URL is also available over here. And similarly, it will have all the information of all the 8 different slides, in case depending on how many slides the user has entered, how many slides he has entered the value for. Okay, so all of that data in form of an array will be available over here, and then we're going to check if is array, if this is an array, which means if there are values inside of it, and if it's a home page or a front page. And then over here, because this slides will be an array, it will loop through each of the array items, and it's going to use the details of it. So link is going to get me the link, title is going to get me the title, description, image, and so on and so forth. And we'll check if that is set, which means we're going to check, because there could be a possibility that the user might not have sent one of these parameters or multiple parameters. He might just use slide one, he might not write the description. That's why we are checking over here that if the link is set, then the link will be equal to the slide link, which means you'll get the value from that array for the link. Similarly for title, description, and image. Okay, and once we have all of that value, we're going to go ahead and echo out the image, and then if title or description is present, then we're going to echo out the title and description. Okay, and over here that this loop ends, and then we're going to go ahead and count the number of slides. Okay, and if there are more than one slide, then we're going to have this button of previous and next over here. Okay, that's what we need to do. Next thing what we need to do is we need to go on to the GitHub on this link. You can pause it and take this link, and we're going to take this slick.js file. We're going to copy this entire content of this file, and we're going to create slick.js into JS vendor slick.js. So we'll go to our JS folder. We'll create a new folder called vendor. And then we're going to create a file called slick.js. slick.js inside of the vendor, and we're just going to copy the whole thing from that over here. So I've already copied it. It's a pretty long file, so I've gone ahead and copied that. Okay, so this all of the data has been copied from this GitHub link. Okay, so that once that is done, then you need to obviously include this file into your functions.php. So you need to go to your functions.php, where you have included all the scripts under the Cornova scripts, and at this point you can define WP register scripts. Cornova slick is the handle name, is the unique ID, and then this is the constant that's giving us the path up until the JS folder, and then vendor, and then slick.js, and then array jQuery. So this should be loaded after jQuery. This is the dependency. Then the Cornova version is going to get the version of our theme, and true means this will be loaded in footer section. Okay, and then in the main JS, just ensure that you include this as the dependency. Okay, once that is done, you will still notice that that is not being displayed over here. The slider is not being displayed over here. The reason for this is that we have created the file, which is slider.php, the file responsible for displaying the content on the front end, but we haven't included that yet. So we need to include this file. Okay, so let's see. So obviously we want the slider into our header section. So what we need to do is, let's close this all. We should go to our header.php, and let's say I want the slider after the header section, after the menu and everything. So I'll go ahead and call getTemplatePart function, which is going to give me include the file from the temp directory and Slider.php. Okay, so include from the temp directory Slider.php. Okay, so now if you go ahead and refresh the page, we'll notice that we now have the slides available. So I'm going to quickly fill in all of these images so we can have the slider showing up here. So I've gone ahead and filled the details for 4 slides. I haven't done it for all. So ensure that the size of these images are the same. Otherwise, you may have it will show like a broken slide. Okay, I didn't have the same images, so I've just put it for the demo purposes. But just ensure that these image sizes are the same. So you can see that these slides are being shown over here because we have included our slider.php file where we have written codes to display the slider, but nothing is happening. Slider is not moving. The reason for this is because we need to write some codes for that into our main.js in order for the slider to work. So what you need to do is we need to go into our main.js and we need to add some codes there. So we'll go to JS folder and go to main.js and we'll write this set of codes. So what's happening over here is basically, this is self invoking function. Okay, and over here I'm saying that window.cornova back to top. So I'm defining a property and its value is theme back to top. So there are different things going on over here, like this dot create mobile menu, this dot create slider, this dot fix admin, this dot events, and different functions I've created over here for certain different things for my theme. But what we are interested in this basically is this one, this dot create slider. So even if you just inside of this function, if you just define this function, which is create slider, and then call this function into init, and at the bottom just call this window.cornova init, and that should do the work. You don't have to really use all of that to create to display the slider rolling. Okay, so if you go ahead inside of this function, you can check I've created a variable Cornova slider, and I'm using jQuery to access Cornova slider ID. If you notice, if you go ahead and inspect element, and you can see that the ID of this entire div which contains all of these slides is Cornova slider. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to access. I'm trying to access this div, and what I'm doing is I'm checking if Cornova slider dot length, which means if this is created. Okay, if it has value, if it has children inside of it, if it has got children inside of it, which means dot length will be true. Then go ahead and use this function. Now, where is this function coming from? Cornova slider dot slick. So if you go to the canvila.github.io slick, you will notice that you have got different options available for different effects. Okay, so for different effects you have different functions available. So let's say I want this effect, I want autoplay, and I want the slider to move like this. So if you want that, all you have to do is inside of your dot slick. So this is basically jQuery and then accessing that particular div which contains all of the slider images and slider contents. So this is basically equivalent to this, and I've taken that in a variable. I'm saying that instead of saying this dot slick, I'm just saying Cornova slider dot slick. So it's the same thing. Okay, so dot slick, and inside of it what we need to do is we need to go ahead and copy paste the entire thing over here. And once we do that, it's just saying slideshow is 3, slide to roll is 1, autoplay is true. Okay, so now if we go ahead and refresh the page, okay, 1 second. All right, before the slider shows working on the front end, you also need to add the style to your theme. Okay, so you need to go to this link and then just copy the whole content of this page. Okay, all of this code for the CSS, and go onto your style.css and just paste this entire thing from Slider, okay, up until here. Once you paste that, and if you go onto your front end, and you'll be able to see that yes, the slider is working. Okay, so the autoplay is working. Perfect. So that's all about then. If you have any questions, you can leave the comment and I'll be able to answer them. Thank you very much, guys. Bye bye.